At 21, she gave herself to a 40-year-old billionaire, but his locked door hid a dark secret. Chloe had survived foster homes, loneliness, and heartbreak, but nothing prepared her for the knock at 11. The stranger's eyes held promises of violence. He yelled, "Where's Carrie?" Chloe froze, her voice a terrified whisper. "Please, she's not here. Then you'll pay her debt, in ways you can't imagine." Panic surged through her. Chloe shoved him with all her strength and bolted into the rain. Barefoot, breathless, she sprinted through the slick New York streets. Behind her, footsteps echoed, closer, faster. A rough hand grabbed her arm. "Not so fast, sweetheart," he hissed. "We're going back to wait for Carrie. And maybe we'll have some fun first." That's when a black car screeched to a stop beside her. The window slid down, revealing a man with dark blue, intense eyes and an expensive suit. "Get in," he said, voice low and commanding. Now. Chloe had a split second to decide. Trust a stranger or face the nightmare behind her. She dove into the car. Her life would never be the same. Rain pounded the roof as Chloe slammed the car door behind her. She was shaking. The stranger didn't look at her, just floored the gas. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice barely steady. He kept his eyes on the road as he answered. "Someone who saved you." City lights streaked past in gold and red. Chloe's chest still heaved as she stole a glance at the man behind the wheel. The suit, the car, the way he gripped the road, everything screamed power, control, danger. But what froze her wasn't the luxury. It was him. Those ice-blue eyes, locked on the road, unreadable. He hadn't said a word since she got in. "Thank you," she whispered, almost afraid to break the silence. "If you hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened." At last, his gaze slid to hers. Steel blue met green, and her breath stopped cold. There was hardness in his look, yes, but beneath it, something else. Something that reached straight through her chest. "I'm Killian Bale," he said, his voice low and commanding, laced with a crisp British accent. "Chloe," she breathed back. Her own name felt like a secret in his presence. "Tell me, Chloe, do you have anywhere safe to go?" The question hit her like a blow. Where could she go? No money, no phone, no one to call. "No," she whispered. Then, "You'll stay with me." The underground garage looked like something out of a movie. Sleek, polished concrete, rows of luxury cars gleaming under cold lights. When the elevator doors slid shut, Chloe's heart thudded so loud it echoed in her own ears. Her soaked t-shirt clung to every curve, bare feet trembling against the marble floor. For a moment, without even realizing, she bit her lip. And he noticed. The faintest curve pulled at the corner of his mouth. "Look at me," he said, quiet. A whisper wrapped like a command. Her eyes lifted, green colliding with steel blue. The elevator seemed to shrink around them, the air thinning until her lungs burned. Killian leaned close, his breath grazing her ear. "You're afraid of me. But right now, you have nowhere else to go." As the numbers climbed, Chloe realized the truth. She was completely at this stranger's mercy. She'd run from one danger, straight into another. The elevator chimed. Ding. The doors slid open. Killian straightened, composed, as if nothing had happened. He stepped out first, his stride calm, assured. "Are you coming?" he asked, without even glancing back. Chloe's legs trembled beneath her. Every nerve screamed to run, but she had no choice, no other place to go. So she followed. The apartment door towered over her, heavy, like the entrance to a cathedral. Even before stepping inside, a rich, intoxicating scent spilled out. Chloe crossed the threshold. Paintings lined the walls, shadows clinging to them like secrets. Then Killian was there, right in front of her, close enough to feel his breath. His hand tilted her chin up. "Welcome to my home, Chloe. But understand this. If you steal anything, I will find you. And the danger I bring will be far worse than what you ran from tonight." Her eyes burned with sudden tears. "I'm not a thief." She turned, voice breaking. "If I'm a problem, I'll just leave." but his hand closed around her wrist, firm, unshakable. "Not at this hour. You're not going anywhere. You're staying here." Her chest tightened. Relief or fear? She couldn't tell. What she knew was simple. This man carried a kind of danger, and Chloe had spent her whole life recognizing its scent. Chloe's eyes dropped to the hand gripping her wrist. His fingers were firm, yet the touch felt more claiming than threatening. When she lifted her gaze, the light caught the sharp cut of his cheekbones and those steel-blue eyes. Eyes that scanned her, head to toe, like they could read every secret she tried to hide. Killian's tall, powerful frame dwarfed her small figure, and that difference sparked something unsettling inside her. A tremor of unease, and a pull she couldn't explain. He leaned in, voice dropping low, velvet edged with warning. That wrist, in the wrong hands, it could be trouble. A pause, the faintest curl of his lips. "Lucky for you, it's in mine." Chloe's pulse hammered, but she couldn't look away. This man, Killian Bale, London-born, a name whispered in New York's art world with both respect and caution. Every move about him screamed control, like life itself bent to his rules. And now, so did she. Killian Bale hadn't meant to be on that street tonight. After the auction, his mind had been drifting, still raw from his mother's death a week ago. He'd taken a wrong turn, something he never did. And that's when he saw it. A girl, barefoot, soaked in rain, being dragged by a man. At first, he told himself it wasn't his concern. Not his world, not his problem. But then, in the rearview mirror, he caught her face. The desperation in her eyes hit him harder than any deal, any painting, any memory. His hands tightened on the wheel. An instinct he didn't recognize took over. For once in his life, Killian Bale didn't think. He slammed the brakes and stopped. He shrugged off his jacket and hung it in the closet, but his eyes never left the girl standing frozen by the door. Hands in his pockets, he tilted his head slightly. Bathrooms that way. Take a shower, warm yourself up, unless you'd rather catch a cold. Chloe stepped out of the marble bathroom, nearly the size of her entire apartment, with a towel wrapped tightly around her body. She froze for a moment, unsure of what to do next. Her clothes were soaked. Putting them back on wasn't an option. Barefoot, she padded down the hallway, eyes catching on the erotic paintings, the sculpted busts lined neatly on the console. Every detail seemed intimidating, foreign, like she had stepped into another world. In the living room, Killian stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of scotch in hand, watching the lights of Central Park flicker in the distance. He didn't like surprises. And a woman in his loft, his carefully controlled space, was never part of his plan. Yet tonight was different. This girl, with her wet hair and haunted green eyes, carried something he couldn't look away from. Innocence, tangled with defiance. Fragility, edged with fire. Chloe cleared her throat softly, just enough to announce herself. Killian turned, and for the briefest flicker, something warm lit his icy blue eyes. Then it was gone. He took a slow step toward her, every movement deliberate, predatory, and self-assured. Chloe's breath caught in her chest as his gaze traveled over her, pausing unapologetically on the length of her bare legs. He lifted his glass, took a slow sip of scotch, then pointed with the rim of it. "Sit there." His voice was calm, but it wasn't a request. Chloe glanced at the armchair he indicated, then perched carefully on the edge, her towel clutched tighter around her body. Killian set his glass down and, without another word, strode past her toward the corridor. She pressed her knees together, heart pounding in her throat. He saved me. He didn't have to. But why? Chloe's eyes swept over the room, the art on the walls, the polished marble, the suffocating weight of wealth. And then him. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up, the top 3 buttons undone. Even before her gaze reached his face, the sharp, intoxicating scent of his cologne hit her. He was the most devastatingly attractive man she had ever seen. Mid-30s, maybe closer to 40, it was hard to tell, walking toward her with a small med kit in hand. "Put your leg up on the table." His voice was low, commanding, an order, yet somehow an invitation. Chloe hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the towel tight. But those steel blue eyes had locked onto hers, and she couldn't look away. My leg. Why? Killian's gaze flicked to her knee, then back to her face. You're hurt, he said quietly. Chloe's eyes flicked down to her knee. She must have scraped it against the wall while running. Thin streaks of blood were about to drip to the floor. She shifted under the towel, nerves and a strange thrill tangling inside her. No one had cared for her wounds in years. The mix of anticipation and unease made her legs tense. Slowly, she stretched her leg out. Killian's hands steadied it, his fingers hot against her skin. As he dabbed antiseptic, every touch sent a shiver racing through her veins, like sparks of electricity. Her leg trembled on its own. He pressed his palm firmly over her thigh. You're so sensitive, he murmured. Tell me, Chloe, are you shaking because of me? Or because you're still haunted by what happened tonight? Chloe held her breath. The longer she looked into his eyes, the harder it became to hide what her body was giving away. I'm just nervous. Killian pressed the bandage down, but his fingers lingered too long against her skin. The scent of whiskey, clean soap, and smoke clung to him, dizzying, intoxicating. You're better now, he said. His tone was calm, but beneath it, there was ownership. Thank you for everything, she whispered. He rose slowly, never breaking eye contact. Then he leaned down, his voice grazing her lips like a secret. You haven't seen anything yet, Chloe. With heavy, deliberate steps, he disappeared down the hallway. Chloe sat frozen, her heart hammering. What did he mean by that? Should she run? Could she even run in this state? Her wide green eyes darted around the room, searching for answers, for escape, for something. As Chloe wrestled with her own indecision, his voice carried from deeper inside the loft. Low, rich, impossible to ignore. The guest room's on the left. You can sleep there. A pause, then softer, almost amused. I left a few things on the bed for you to wear. They're mine, so they'll be big on you, but more comfortable than that towel. Chloe moved down the quiet hallway, her bare feet whispering against the marble floor. Her mind was a storm. She should be afraid, maybe even terrified. And yet, the adrenaline surging through her veins made her pulse race in a way she secretly liked. What does he really want from me? She wondered. Just a kind stranger who stepped in at the right time? Or something far more dangerous? Every painting on the walls, every shadow of this loft, every measured move of his, it all felt like a puzzle, a trap that might already have her caught before she even realized it. Chloe padded back into the living room, the oversized white t-shirt brushing just above her knees. The lights were dim, casting the space in a soft glow. Killian sat on the wide sofa by the window, no longer in his armor of a tailored suit but in a plain t-shirt and sweatpants, stripped down, disarming, and somehow even more magnetic. I guess you're more comfortable now. His hand tapped the space beside him. Come, sit with me. Chloe perched on the edge, stealing a glance at him. I still don't know why you saved me, she said, her voice steadier now. The initial shock had worn off, and strength, real or feigned, rose to the surface. Killian's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something darker, a secret. Neither do I. Maybe I was supposed to take a wrong turn tonight. This time, Chloe didn't look away. Her gaze locked with his, green fire meeting steel blue ice. Killian leaned in, slow and deliberate. His breath skimmed her hair. Or maybe, he murmured, you were supposed to find me. He lifted the glass, eyes never leaving hers, and drank. Now, tell me exactly what's going on. Killian's voice had dropped back into that serious, commanding tone. Chloe's pulse jumped. How many faces does this man have? In less than an hour, she had seen him shift from savior to flirt to mystery to caretaker. And now, the cold authority of someone used to being obeyed. Every 5 minutes, another mask, another glimpse, and Chloe had no idea where to place him in her mind. Chloe locked her wide green eyes on his. She swallowed hard, then began to speak. She told him everything. Roommate Carrie's gambling debts, the man at the door, her frantic escape. Then, haltingly, she let pieces of her past slip out. The foster homes, the loneliness, the endless fight to survive. Killian didn't interrupt. He didn't even blink. He just turned the glass of whiskey slowly in his hand, those steel blue eyes never leaving her. He listened to the silence between her words. When her voice finally broke off, he lifted his glass, then extended it toward her. "I think you need a drink." As she reached for it, his fingers brushed against hers. She should have pulled back. She didn't. Killian's fingers drifted toward her damp hair, hovering between touching and pulling away. "With all this fragility, how have you survived this long?" Chloe took a small sip from Killian's glass of whiskey, the burn settling in her chest. Her gaze darted away, landing on the nude paintings across the room. Was it excitement? Desire? Or just the dangerous mystery in this man that had her pulse racing? "Does the nudity bother you?" he asked, a faint, knowing smile tugging at his lips. She startled. "No, I paint too. It just surprised me to see art here." His eyes narrowed, studying her differently now. "You paint?" "Yes. I'm studying art at the university. I also work part-time." "That's unexpected." His voice had a rough edge, like he wasn't used to being caught off guard. Killian rose to his full height and turned to face her completely. "Maybe one day I'll see your work." Killian's eyes darkened, the corner of his mouth twitching like he'd just made a decision. "Forget someday," he said, his tone low and final. "You'll show me tonight." He turned, walked to the console, and came back with a heavy sketchbook and a set of charcoal sticks. He dropped them onto the table in front of her. "Go on." Chloe's throat tightened. No one had ever commanded her art before. Her hands hovered, trembling, not sure if it was fear, defiance, or the strange thrill of being seen. Chloe blinked. What do you want me to draw?" "Whatever comes to you. I want to see it." The pencil felt heavy in her trembling fingers. She pulled her legs up under her, small and uncertain inside the oversized shirt. The blank page in her lap stared back like a dare. Killian sat closer, his shoulder brushing hers. Heat radiated off him, the scent of whiskey and clean soap filling her lungs. The nearness was impossible to ignore. Her hand hovered, then began to move. Tentative strokes scratching across the page. Lines took shape, shaky at first, then steadier, and all the while she could feel Killian watching, like every mark she made belonged to him as much as it did to her. The figure on the page, the curves, the shading, almost mirrored the women painted on his walls. Killian's hand shot out, snatching the paper before she could even take another breath. His eyes moved over it in silence, jaw tight, the glassy reflection of the lamp glinting off his sharp cheekbones. Then crumple. The sound cut through the air. He tossed it to the floor without a second glance. "No." His voice was low, final. "You filled the page, but you hid your soul." "I don't care about lines without blood in them." He reached for another sheet, laid it on her lap. His gaze pinned her in the place, blue steel locking with trembling green. "Again," he ordered, softer this time, but more dangerous for it. "This time, Chloe, draw what you really feel." Chloe drew in a shaky breath and set the pencil to the page again, but her hands trembled even harder. Because this time, Killian was closer. His hand slipped through her hair, tracing down to the nape of her neck, fingertips brushing her skin in the lightest touch. "Your pencil," he murmured, voice barely more than a whisper, "should move with the tremors of your body and your mind." Chloe gripped the pencil tighter, but when his touch drifted lower, grazing toward her thigh, her breath quickened. The lines on the page grew chaotic, shaping into something that looked almost like her own silhouette. The pencil nearly slipped from her fingers. She lifted her gaze and collided with those ice-blue eyes. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. Killian's breath was hot against her ear. Chloe turned her face toward him, knowing exactly what could happen. Their lips a breath apart. His fingers brushed slowly across her mouth, tracing the curve. The pencil slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The tension in her stomach spread through every inch of her body, pulling her taut. And then Killian stopped. Desire burned in her eyes, and he saw it. She had known this man barely 2 hours, yet here she was, in the home of someone dangerous, someone who unsettled her and drew her in all at once. Killian turned his gaze down to the sketch on the paper, then back to her. A faint, unreadable smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. His voice dropped, almost a growl. Finally, you let your soul spill onto the page. But there's still something you're keeping from me, isn't there, Chloe? Chloe's gaze flicked to the sketch in front of her. Maybe it was the best charcoal drawing she had ever done. Yet it was unsettling. A half-naked woman, faint outlines, almost her own silhouette staring back at her. She blinked hard, pulse racing. Just moments ago, his breath had been on her skin, his fingers tracing her lips. And now, it was like he'd pulled all that heat back, leaving her suspended. "Go to your room," Killian said finally, setting his glass of scotch on the table with a muted thud. His voice was low, ragged. His eyes lingered on her mouth, then drifted slowly down the lines of her body. "If you stay here—" His lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "This night will last much, much longer." For a split second, Chloe felt hollow inside. The spark in her chest had been left unfinished. Like, if it had gone just a little further, it would have ignited into something else entirely. But now, it had slipped away. She rose quietly and made her way to the guest room. Closing the door behind her, she realized her heart was still racing. The dim light blurred the ceiling above as she sank onto the bed. She listened, every nerve waiting for the sound of footsteps, for him to stop outside her door, maybe even come in. But the silence was unbroken. Only the hum of city lights and the soft patter of rain against the glass. Chloe pulled the blanket tight against her chest, eyes closing, breath shallow. The echo of his words haunted her. "If you stay, this night will last much longer." Her teeth caught her lower lip. What if she had stayed? The thought alone burned through her veins, leaving her body hot and restless. The gray light of dawn slipped through the sheer curtains. Chloe opened her eyes to a silence so heavy it almost rang in her ears. When she stepped into the hall, she froze. On the marble console sat a leather wallet, its flap slightly open. A hint of banknotes peeked out. Killian had to still be here, sleeping. Her pulse quickened. She reached out, fingers trembling, and slipped a single $10 bill free. Just bus fare, she told herself. Nothing more. She pulled the door shut behind her, quiet as a shadow. At her own apartment, Chloe stopped cold. The door was ajar. Slowly, she pushed it open. Chaos slammed into her senses. Alcohol cheap perfumed the acrid sting of fear. The place was wrecked. Drawers gutted, couch overturned, shards of glass on the floor. Carrie was gone. Chloe's throat tightened. She snatched her bag and phone with shaking hands, not daring to look around again. The front door slammed behind her as she bolted down the street. By the time she reached the art studio, her breath was still uneven. The smell of paint and charcoal wrapped around her, grounding her for a moment. She dropped into her seat, but her mind was far from still. Killian's eyes, the burn of his hand on her skin, and the lines she'd left on that page. Chloe pulled a folded sheet of paper from her bag. When she opened it, the graphite lines seemed to still tremble. A woman stared back, half bare, vulnerable yet unyielding. "Is this me?" she thought. "Or is this the way he sees me? May I?" The sudden voice of her drawing professor made her flinch. Before she could react, the paper was lifted from her hands. He studied it, brows slowly arching higher. "Chloe, this is extraordinary." His words cut through the hum of the studio. "It's not just the technique. You've given this woman a soul. There's breath in her eyes. This is the most alive sketch I've seen in a long time." Heat rushed to Chloe's cheeks, because she knew the truth. That soul wasn't only hers. A part of it belonged to Killian Bale. After class, the evening rushed by. Chloe hurried down the street toward her cafe shift when Ryan suddenly caught up with her. "Chloe, you don't look okay." "What happened?" Her throat tightened. She bit her lip. She didn't mention Killian, but as she told him about the wrecked apartment, about Carrie vanishing, her eyes filled despite herself. "Have you seen Carrie?" "I can't reach her," she whispered. Ryan's hand settled on her shoulder, steady and serious. "Chloe, you know Carrie. She's always caught up in things outside of school, but you shouldn't be alone. That guy could come back. Stay at my place tonight. You'll be safer." Ryan was the son of a well-off family, always carrying an easy kind of safety with him. And he'd always been a little too interested in Chloe. If she wanted, she could go with him. She nodded faintly. "Thanks. I'll let you know after my shift." By the time Chloe left the cafe, the street lamps were already glowing. She slung her backpack over her shoulder and drew in a shaky breath. 2 choices stood in front of her. Ryan's place, safe, calm, ordinary, or... Her pulse quickened. Her thoughts betrayed her. They raced back to him. Killian's stare, the faint curl of his lips, the heat of his hand on her knee. Ryan could give her safety. But why couldn't she get this man out of her head? Her feet had already decided for her, before she even realized it. Chloe was standing in front of Killian's door. Her fingers clenched tight around the strap of her bag, her chest rising and falling like she'd just run a mile. She didn't know what waited for her on the other side. All she knew was this. She shouldn't be here, and yet she was. Killian stepped out of the elevator, loosening his tie, and then he paused. There, curled up against his door, knees pulled tight to her chest, head resting on the marble frame, was Chloe. She had fallen asleep right there, the cold stone against her cheek. Her long, damp brown hair clung to her face, lips parted just slightly. For a moment, Killian forgot to breathe, because in that fragile state, Chloe looked like 2 things at once, an innocent girl, and the most tempting woman he'd ever seen. He crouched down. At first, he only looked, but then he couldn't help himself. His hand reached out, fingers sliding through her hair, softer than he expected. He leaned closer, drew in a breath, the clean trace of soap tangled with the salt of rain. Chloe stirred. Her lashes fluttered, and then her eyes opened. For a heartbeat, she didn't know where she was, until she saw them, those ice-blue eyes staring back. Her chest tightened so hard it hurt. "So, you came," Killian said. His voice carried weight, half meaning, half mockery. His fingertips drifted along her cheek, and Chloe's whole body shivered. Part of her wanted to pull away. The other part ached to fall closer. He pulled her to her feet. As they stepped inside, Chloe breathed in that scent she remembered from last night, the mix of leather, wood, and something darker that clung to the walls of his home. Killian moved down the hall, but she stopped near the console. With a flush of shame, she dug into her bag and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill. "This morning, I borrowed from you. I wanted to give it back." He turned, one hand still in his pocket, his body completely still. Only his eyes moved, piercing, unreadable, locked on her. That stare made Chloe's knees weaken. She hesitated, then slowly placed the bill on the console. Her teeth worried her bottom lip. "That's why you came back?" His voice was low, caught between a threat and a tease. Chloe's breath quickened. She tried to look away, but those eyes dragged her back. The silence between them stretched, sharp as a blade. Killian took a slow step closer, the sound of his shoes against the marble, loud in the silence. He tilted his head, lips brushing so close to her ear she could feel the heat of his breath. "Why are you here, Chloe?" he whispered. Her throat tightened. "Because I wanted to see you." The corner of his mouth curved, not a smile, but something sharper, more dangerous. "And yet," he murmured, his voice low and cutting, "you're shaking beside me like a leaf." Chloe's eyes widened, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. He was right. She was trembling. But the dangerous truth was this: her fear didn't push her away, it pulled her closer. Without warning, Killian slipped the bag from her shoulder and set it aside. "Are you hungry?" His voice had changed, softer now, almost gentle. Chloe blinked, caught off guard. Her lips parted, but no words came. He leaned in, breathing her in, fingertips tracing the delicate line of her neck before pulling back. "Come, I'll cook for you." The kitchen lights spilled warmth across the marble counters as he moved with deliberate ease. Sleeves rolled, knife flashing against a cutting board. His hands were busy, but his eyes never left her. This girl wasn't like the others. Her presence should have unsettled him, should have been a burden. Instead, it stirred something far more dangerous. Desire tangled with an ache he hadn't let himself feel in years. She was too young, too innocent, too tempting, and that rare, volatile mix was the most dangerous thing of all. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the soft glow above the counter. Chloe sat perched on a bar stool, her bare feet brushing against the cool marble floor. She realized, almost with a jolt, that she was enjoying watching every deliberate movement of his body. Killian slid a plate of steaming carbonara in front of her, then reached for the crystal glass. Without breaking eye contact, he poured red wine. The liquid trickled down with a thin melodic sound that somehow matched the pounding rhythm in Chloe's chest. "So, what do you do?" Chloe asked at last. Her voice was low, like she was half afraid of revealing how curious she really was. "Every wall here has a painting." His eyes lifted to hers over the rim of the glass. "I'm an art dealer. Auctions, collections, galleries. Art is my business." Chloe's eyes widened, lips parting slightly. "So you actually know the artists? Personally?" "Most of them." He took a slow sip of wine, savoring not the drink but the wonder in her face. Almost as if that was the flavor he wanted. Then, without warning, he turned the question back on her. "And you? With all your money worries, why would you choose a field where the payoff is so rare?" Chloe flinched. The bluntness of the question made her feel almost naked. For a second, she stared into her glass, then forced the words out past the tightness in her throat. "Because painting is my passion. Since I was a child, it's the only thing that's ever helped me survive." She took a sip of wine. The alcohol slid down, spreading heat through her chest, her arms, her legs. And across the table his eyes only fed that fire. The corner of Killian's mouth tugged upward. Not a smile, not mockery, more like "I see you." "Life's carved a hard road for you, but staying safe." His gaze cut through her, steady and unrelenting. "That's never really been your style, is it?" Her breath caught. "And art kept you alive," he added, voice lower now, almost a confession. "Mine, on the other hand, it's been corrupted. Maybe that's why we're sitting here tonight." Chloe swallowed hard. He was right. With every word he stripped her down, layer by layer. No matter how much she'd searched for safe harbors, somehow she always ended up in the middle of danger. And now, here she was again, across from a man who read her like an open book without ever looking away. But what had he meant? His life had been corrupted? Killian cleared the plates, refilled both glasses with slow precision, then carried them into the living room. In the low light, crystal glinted as he lowered himself onto the sofa. "Come here," he said. His tone was balanced on a knife's edge. Not quite a command, not quite an invitation, but impossible to resist. Chloe sat down beside him and realized with a jolt of clarity that she had been waiting for this moment. Her heart was pounding so high in her chest it felt lodged in her throat. His shoulder brushed hers, close enough that warmth passed between them. He leaned against the armrest, one elbow propped, head resting lightly on his hand. His body angled toward her, his gaze unwavering, all-consuming. Chloe lifted her glass, but even as she brought it to her lips, her gaze skittered away. She knew if their eyes locked, her breath would vanish. Then Killian moved. No hesitation. His hand pressed against her chest, right over her heart. The touch wasn't rough, wasn't gentle, just there, steady and unshakable. Her eyes widened, then slowly rose to meet the piercing blue of his. "You paint to survive life," Killian said, voice low and husky. His finger pressed just slightly harder where her heart thudded. "But tell me, how do you plan to survive?" "Me." Chloe's breath hitched, her answer slipping out like a fragile secret. "I'm stronger than I look." Chloe's hand slid over his, hesitant at first, then firmer, guiding his fingers to her lips. She pressed them there, a trembling confession in her touch. "When you touched me, I felt more alive than I ever have." Killian set his glass down with deliberate slowness, the crystal kissing the table. Then he leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. "Maybe," his voice dropped to a gravelly murmur, "you're too innocent to even know what you want, and what I could do to you." His lips hovered by her skin. "You can't begin to imagine." His breath traced the curve of her mouth, then down along her neck. Chloe's body went rigid, every nerve pulled tight. Desire and danger blurred together until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. For the first time in her life, Chloe was afraid of her own longing. Killian's voice was low and rough, almost warning. "Look at me, Chloe. Be careful what you want. You're innocent. My world is dark enough to break you. No woman survives it." Chloe bit down on her lip, her chest heaving. But the fear that had been gripping her began to slip away, replaced by something far stronger, an unbearable pull. "Maybe," she whispered, then her voice steadied. "Maybe I'm not just any woman." Her hand lifted, fingers brushing the line of his jaw, trailing up to his cheek. She never broke his gaze. For the first time, something flickered in those ice-blue eyes. Surprise. It darkened quickly into something else, something heavier. Desire, yes, but also a shadow of recognition. Women had always been flesh to him, bodies, nothing more. But this girl, this fragile, defiant, brilliant girl, was tearing through the walls he had built his whole life. The air between them thickened, every breath colliding in the charged silence. Killian could have pulled back, should have pulled back, but then Chloe's trembling fingers brushed his lips. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You scare me, but I want more." A dangerous curve tugged at his mouth, the ice in his eyes deepening to a darker shade. He leaned in, his words grazing her skin like a secret. "Are you sure? Because I'm warning you, Chloe. You're stepping into a world you've never known, a world that doesn't let you walk back out." Killian's fingers moved with slow precision, each button slipping free under his touch. His voice came low, husky, almost a growl against her skin. "Say it, Chloe. I need to hear it." His lips trailed across her bare shoulder, warm and deliberate, sending shivers through her. Chloe's breath caught, a soft whimper escaping before she even realized it. Her eyes fluttered shut, pulse racing, and then, with a trembling but certain voice, she whispered, I want you." Killian's hands moved with deliberate care, each layer of fabric slipping away under his touch. Chloe's breath hitched, her skin prickling as if every nerve had come alive. She could feel the trembling in her own body, the way her muscles quivered under his gaze, under his hands. What had he done to her? This man, this stranger she barely knew, yet her entire being responded to him as if he had always owned her. She had never felt anything like this. The rush, the heat, the dizzying mix of fear and desire. And now, there was no stopping it. His hands moved over Chloe's bare skin like a brush across canvas, every touch sending shivers through her. Her body arched toward him, desperate and unthinking. When Killian finally captured her mouth, his whisper burned against her lips. "You're making my head spin, Chloe." His grip tightened on her hips, pulling her closer until she suddenly froze. He stopped instantly, searching her emerald eyes. There it was, a flicker of fear beneath the rush of desire. Her breath came fast, uneven, before she whispered, voice breaking, This is my first time." Killian's eyes widened, a mix of shock and something softer, something almost tender. His voice dropped, rough with disbelief. "First time." He lowered his head against her chest, his voice rough with restraint. "God, Chloe, you don't make this easy, do you?" "I'm already fighting to keep control. The last thing I want is to hurt you." When he finally lifted his head, Killian found Chloe's eyes brimming with tears. "Hey," his voice softened. "Come here." He pulled her onto his lap, strong arms closing around her, and Chloe's legs instinctively wrapped around him. His hand slid into her damp hair, stroking gently. For the first time that night, the dangerous, untouchable man seemed to vanish, replaced by something else entirely. A safe harbor. Chloe wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing her face into his shoulder. And in that moment, a feeling she had never known before washed over her, an aching, overwhelming closeness. And it was with him, a man who wasn't supposed to be good at closeness at all. Her tear-choked voice trembled as she whispered, "Don't you want me?" "Look at me," Killian murmured, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Chloe lifted her head, her damp green eyes locking with the sharp blue of his. Killian leaned in, brushing away a tear from her cheek with his lips. "Oh, God," he whispered, breathless, undone by the force of her gaze. He knew then he couldn't hold back. His mouth crashed onto hers, urgent, hungry. With a growl, his hands gripped her hips, firm, unyielding, closing the last of the distance between them. Chloe's body arched in his lap, trembling with a rhythm that made her moan against his lips. The night swallowed them whole. Every breath, every cry, every shiver blurring into the darkness, until there was nothing left but surrender. Chloe stirred awake in the middle of the night. A strong arm was wrapped around her, holding her in a way she'd never known before. Protective, unyielding. Killian was fast asleep, his breath warm against the back of her neck. Carefully, she slipped out of his hold. Manhattan's night glow spilled through the glass, painting the bedroom in shades of silver as her bare feet touched the cool floor. She pulled on a thin t-shirt and padded into the hallway for a glass of water. That's when she noticed it. One door, closed tight. Her curiosity pressed harder than her caution. Slowly, silently, she pushed it open. Inside, the air was heavy with the sharp scent of oil paint. A massive canvas dominated the center of the room. Brushes and paints were scattered across the floor. The unfinished strokes seemed alive, shadows and shapes clawing at the edges of the canvas. In the stillness of the night, Chloe stood barefoot before the canvas. Her fingertips brushed through the paints, smearing color onto her skin as if the pigments belonged to her. With trembling hands, she drew bold, unsteady strokes across the canvas, each one spilling not just paint, but a bare fragment of her soul. Her body moved in rhythm, every motion translating into wild, unrestrained lines. The image forming was raw, untamed, seductive in its chaos, alive with her hunger, her defiance, her truth. From the doorway, Killian watched in silence, his eyes darkening. He had spent a lifetime pouring fortunes into art, but he had never seen anything like this. On this girl's body, art wasn't studied. It wasn't curated. It poured out of her, raw, primal, unstoppable. The way her hands smeared paint across the canvas was wild, feral, free. Every movement of her body was its own confession, every line on the canvas a surrender, just as she had surrendered to him only hours before. Killian said nothing. He only watched. Her damp hair clung to her neck, the thin t-shirt tracing the curve of her waist in the dim light. It was innocence and eroticism in the same breath, an impossible combination that unraveled him. He swallowed hard. For years he had guarded himself, kept women at arm's length, reduced their presence to nothing more than fleeting physical release. But this girl was breaking through every wall he had built, walking straight over the ruins. With soundless steps, he moved closer. Chloe felt it, the heat at her back, the air shift. Then the brush of lips against her bare shoulder. A jolt shot through her body, sharp and electric, as if her very skin recognized him before her mind did. "Don't stop," Killian whispered, his lips pressing into the line of her neck. His hands slid from her breasts down to her stomach, slow but claiming. The shapes on the canvas blurred, but inside Chloe the desire sharpened, cutting, undeniable. Her fingers trembled, smearing paint across the canvas as soft whimpers slipped from her lips. Those sounds, raw, involuntary, drove Killian insane. When Killian turned her toward him, he didn't see the tearful, innocent girl who had trembled beneath him hours ago. This time, her eyes burned, wild, hungry, unafraid. For a split second, he froze. But then, Chloe dragged her paint-smeared hands across his face, down his bare chest, and crushed her lips to his with a desperate fire. The taste of her, the reckless abandon of it, made something deep inside him shatter. In that instant, Killian knew this girl wasn't just a fleeting night in his bed. She was already becoming something more, and yet, the closer he got, the harder it became to hide from Chloe the part of himself he never wanted her to see. Chloe lay sprawled across the couch, half covered, wearing nothing but Killian's white shirt. Her hair was tangled, lips still swollen, eyes heavy-lidded. Killian's arms were wrapped tight around her from behind, as if waking from a haze. Time felt like it had slipped away. For 2 days they hadn't left the apartment, losing themselves over and over again in each other's touch. His phone had rung endlessly until the battery finally died. When Chloe's phone suddenly buzzed on the table, she jolted upright, but before she could reach for it, Killian calmly picked it up. The name flashing on the screen, Carrie. Killian pushed himself up, his eyes never leaving hers. "Your roommate?" Chloe swallowed. "Yes." She reached for the phone, but he was quicker, snatching it up and pressing it to his ear. Carrie's shrill voice burst through, loud enough for Chloe to hear every word. "Chloe, where are you? When I got home, the place was a disaster. I'm scared to even ask, but Jason might have come looking for money. Where are you? And the rent. You need to pay it." Killian's voice turned to ice. "Chloe doesn't live with you anymore. And her half of the rent? Consider it payment for the fear and chaos you've dumped on her. Drag this out any further, and you'll answer to me. Understand?" On the other end, Carrie's voice cracked in shock and fear. "Who are you? Where's Chloe?" But Killian ended the call without another word. Chloe stared at him, wide-eyed. Why would you do that?" "Because," he said flatly, "you don't know how to protect yourself. Someone has to do it for you." Just then, the phone buzzed with a new message. Killian's eyes dropped to the screen. "Ryan. Chloe, where are you? I've been calling for 2 days. You were supposed to stay at my place. I'm worried." Killian's head lifted slowly, those steel blue eyes cutting straight through her. "Who is he?" Chloe's voice came out low, trembling. "Just a friend." Killian's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. More like a shadow of mockery. "Is he your boyfriend?" "No, he's just—" His hand slid through her hair, fingers deliberate. His voice dropped low and commanding, the kind that made her chest tighten. "Then you'll tell him not to text you again." Chloe's eyes widened. Fear and something else, something she couldn't name, rushed through her veins. Her teeth caught her bottom lip, breath stalling. Killian's fingers tilted her chin upward, forcing her to meet those steel blue eyes. "Do you understand, Chloe?" Her heart pounded so hard she swore he could feel it through her skin. She lowered her head, voice barely more than a whisper. "I understand." But in her eyes, it wasn't fear. It was pull, surrender, desire. In one swift move, Killian lifted her into his arms, Chloe's legs wrapped around his waist, his hands tracing up her thighs, gripping her tighter. His steel-blue gaze locked onto hers, unblinking. "I have a dark side, Chloe," he said, voice low but cutting through her like a blade. "I don't hide it. I'm a controlling man. With women, it's always been complicated. Just bodies." His fingertips slid through her hair, his tone sharpening. "But you—" He stopped, breath hitching when he saw that fragile defiance, that trembling courage in her green eyes. "You belong to me now. Every part of you, not just this bed, not just tonight. All of you." Chloe's heart climbed into her throat. Her lashes fluttered, instinct telling her to look away. But Killian's hand caught her chin, forcing her back to him. "No woman has ever been mine. I've never wanted it. But you—" His voice roughened, almost breaking. "You! I can't stop myself. I have to make you mine. Do you understand that, Chloe?" Chloe's lips parted, her breath coming faster. Her eyes shimmered, fearful, yet tangled with a desperate hunger as she whispered, "I'm trying to understand." Killian's mouth crashed onto hers and time shattered. What began as a command turned into something far deeper, raw, consuming passion. Chloe's hands clutched at his shirt collar, trembling, pulling him closer when every reason told her to pull away. In the next heartbeat, she was beneath him. His weight pressed down, his arms caging her in, stealing her breath. But it wasn't fear that burned through her veins. It was something hotter, wilder. Desire like fire, spreading fast, leaving her powerless against it. Her eyes fluttered shut, her lips spilling soft, broken moans. Thought slipped away. Carrie, debts, the chaos of her life, gone. There was only him. Killian's sharp breaths against her skin, the searing heat of his touch, and the rhythm of his body driving her to the edge of madness. Killian lifted his head, his voice dropping into a dark whisper. "The thing that scares me most is that I won't be able to let you go." Chloe was already lost, surrendering completely. In that moment, nothing outside the two of them existed. Their bodies moved in the same rhythm, and when Killian's words brushed her ear, they scorched through her veins like fire. "You asked for this, Chloe. But understand, there's no going back now." A shaky breath slipped from her lips, her whole body trembling with desire and submission. She didn't know it yet, but stepping into Killian's world would test her with more than passion. It would demand she face his darkness, too. Chloe was spending most nights at Killian's loft now. What had started innocently had spiraled into a hunger neither of them could control. She'd left a few clothes in his closet, her sketchbook on his desk. The place already carried her traces. That evening, Killian called her into the living room. Under the dim lights, a new frame hung on the wall. Chloe's breath caught. It was the painting, the one born in the studio, with paint on her fingers and his touch all over her skin. A raw confession on canvas. Now, displayed in his home, it wasn't just art. It was her soul, her passion, her surrender, all of it staring back at her. "It belongs here," Killian said, taking a slow sip of his whiskey, "because this painting is the only truth." Chloe's heartbeat thundered. She felt both honored and exposed. The next day, Ryan cornered her in the school hallway. "Chloe, where have you been?" "Carrie doesn't even know. You just disappeared." "What's going on?" Chloe swallowed hard. "I moved in with someone." The curiosity in Ryan's eyes instantly shifted to concern. "You moved in? With who?" Her voice came out small, almost hesitant. "You wouldn't know him. His name is—" Killian. Ryan frowned. "Is he from school?" Chloe shook her head. "No, he's older." "A businessman." Ryan's worry deepened, lines creasing his face. "What? Chloe, who is this guy? What are you even doing with a man his age? Are you together?" Chloe shifted nervously. "Ryan, I don't want to talk about this." He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Then let me at least drive you home. If I see where you live, I'll feel better." "There's no need," Chloe said quickly, her stomach tightening. Killian would not like this. Ryan's jaw tightened, his eyes searching hers. "Chloe, we're close friends. What are you saying? That just because some man doesn't want me around, you'll stop talking to me?" Chloe bit her lip with a weary sigh. "It's not like that, Ryan. I'll explain later, okay? I really have to get to work now." That evening, Ryan watched from a distance as Chloe stepped out of the cafe. His chest tightened when a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. Behind the wheel, Killian. Without a moment's hesitation, Chloe slid into the car. Ryan's hands clenched around his motorcycle grips as he started the engine, following from far enough not to be noticed. The city lights blurred past, but his eyes stayed locked on the sedan ahead. The car finally slowed in front of a luxury high-rise. The gate swung open automatically, swallowing the vehicle into the private underground garage. Ryan sat in the dark, engine rumbling under him, staring at the building. This wasn't Chloe's world. Who the hell was this man? The half-empty wine bottle sat between them on the dining table. Killian pushed his glass aside, his eyes never leaving Chloe. "I don't want you working at that cafe anymore," he said, his tone sharp, final. "I spoke to a gallery. You'll greet guests at openings, meet the right people. In time, you'll have a chance to show your own work, and you'll make far more money, Chloe." Her heart skipped. A gallery. The world she'd dreamed of since childhood, suddenly within reach. But the man who was opening that door had walked into her life only 2 weeks ago. As if he could hear her thoughts, Killian leaned in. "With me, you're safe. And I can give you the life you deserve." Chloe lowered her gaze, fingers circling the rim of her glass. In 2 short weeks, she'd felt safer than she ever had before. But the fire he lit in her heart came with a dangerous question. Was he really her safe place? Or was he the cage she would never escape? The next evening, when they walked into the loft, Chloe froze at the sight of a large, elegant box sitting on the table. "What is this?" she asked, wide-eyed. "Get ready," Killian said, stepping into the dimly lit room. His voice carried that quiet authority that always left her breathless. "There's an important exhibition tonight. You're coming with me." Curiosity burning in her chest, Chloe lifted the lid. Her fingers brushed over silk, an evening gown, deep midnight blue. The fabric spilled through her hands like water, and her pulse quickened. "For me?" "Yes," he said simply, never breaking her gaze. His eyes glinted as he added, "And I'll be the one to dress you." He draped the gown over her shoulders, fingertips grazing her bare skin as he guided the fabric into place. When he pulled the zipper slowly upward, his warm breath ghosted against her neck. A shiver ran through her body. It felt less like getting dressed, and more like a ceremony, intimate and consuming. In the mirror, their eyes locked. His voice was a husky whisper. "You are my greatest weakness, Chloe, and also you're a brilliant, talented, and the most beautiful creature I've ever seen." Then, with deliberate slowness, he dragged the zipper back down. The gown slid off her body, pooling at her feet like liquid midnight. Chloe bit her lip. "We're going to be late." Killian scooped her into his arms, his breath hot against her ear. "I don't care." Hours later, under the glittering lights of New York, his sleek black car pulled up in front of one of the city's most prestigious galleries. A valet rushed forward, opening the passenger door. Chloe stepped out, the midnight silk of her gown catching the glow of the street lamps. It was her first step into this world, his world. Her heart pounded so hard she swore everyone could hear it. The fabric clung to her legs, slowing her. But when Killian's hand closed around hers, a flicker of safety steadied her. At the entrance, a man in a sharp gray suit was holding court, commanding the room before the room even began. Klaus Levansky. "Killian Bale," he called out, voice carrying easily over the chatter. Heads turned instantly, eyes locking on them. "You never bring company." His gaze shifted, lingering on Chloe. "And who is this beautiful young woman?" Chloe's cheeks flushed, her breath catching under the weight of 100 curious eyes. But Killian didn't flinch. With a cool smile, he placed his hand firmly at the small of her back, guiding her forward. "Claus," he said smoothly, "this is Chloe, the one I told you about. Starting next week, she'll be working here, in your gallery, as your assistant. For now, she's my assistant." Klaus Levansky, elegant even in his 50s, radiated the easy sophistication of a man who belonged at the very center of the art world. "Oh, Chloe." His voice carried both warmth and gravity. "We'll have to sit down and talk sometime. If Killian Bale recommends someone, I don't take it lightly. A pleasure to meet you." He took her hand and shook it gently, his manner refined. The word sliced through her like a blade. Around them, the crowd kept smiling, champagne glasses clinking, polite laughter rising to the chandelier-lit ceiling. But Chloe's forced smile faltered. Her chest tightened, eyes burning, as she fought to hold back the sting of tears. "Assistant." Killian's hand still pressed against her back, outwardly protective, almost intimate. To everyone else, they looked like a perfect pair. But inside Chloe, a storm was tearing her apart. 2 weeks of nights tangled in his sheets, his breath warm against her skin, his voice whispering her name in the dark, reduced now to one word, spoken so casually it poisoned the air between them. "Assistant." Something cracked inside her. Killian leaned down, his lips brushing her ear, voice pitched for her alone. "Don't look at me like that in front of them. In this world, I have to look unshakable. If there's one thing that could ever be my weakness, it's you. And that's not something I'll show anyone else. Everything will fall into place, Chloe. Just trust me." The hum of the crowd swelled around them, champagne glasses clinking like distant bells. Killian's hand stayed firm at the small of her back, steady, possessive. Through the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos, a man stepped forward with a warm, practiced smile. "Killian Bale," he said in a resonant voice. "We've been doing business in art for years. Thank you again for supporting this exhibition, Robert Adams." Killian inclined his head, his tone respectful but measured, eyes carrying a familiar weight. Robert's smile widened. "I'd like you to meet my son as well. He's interested in the arts, too. Maybe your paths will cross one day." He reached a hand back. Killian's gaze shifted past Robert's shoulder as a figure stepped forward through the crowd. Chloe's pulse spiked, because the next second, Robert's son turned, and it was Ryan. Chloe's throat went dry. The moment their eyes locked, every sound in the gallery seemed to vanish. Ryan's gaze flicked from her face to the hand wrapped firmly around her waist, and in that instant, he understood. Why she'd disappeared, why she'd stopped answering. Killian caught the change in Ryan's expression and slowly turned to Chloe. His ice-blue stare cut into her like steel. The curve at his lips wasn't a smile. It was a warning. Ryan's shock melted into something harder, more complicated. "Hello, Chloe." His voice was steady, but in his eyes lay questions, maybe even hurt. Chloe parted her lips. After a beat of silence, she offered a polite, careful smile. "Hello, Ryan." Killian stood tall beside her, his hand still firm at her waist. His gaze cut into Ryan, though the weight of it pressed heavier on Chloe. "So, Ryan," he said, his tone slow and glacial. Then, without looking away from Chloe's eyes, he added, "A friend from school, I assume." Killian's gaze lingered on Ryan a beat too long. The corner of his mouth curved, but his eyes stayed ice-cold. Then, suddenly, he turned his head, as if he'd just spotted someone across the room. "I need to say hello to someone," he said, his voice clipped and firm. His hand pressed against the small of Chloe's back, steering her with him before she could react. Chloe swallowed hard, falling into step beside him. Her chest felt tight, every breath shallow as she fought to keep her composure. She could still feel Ryan's eyes burning into her from behind, but she didn't dare turn around. A cluster of men immediately closed in on Killian, handshakes, booming laughter, questions tossed into the air. Power radiated from his sharp expression, his commanding presence. Chloe stood at his side. Yet in the roar of the crowd, she had never felt more alone. She slowed her steps, letting her gaze linger on the paintings along the wall. She pretended to study the brushstrokes, the colors, but her mind was caught on only one thing: Ryan. Out of the corner of her eye, she turned her head. Across the room, on the edge of the crowd, Ryan stood motionless. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes. His eyes were locked on her. Chloe quickly looked back at the canvas in front of her, trying to steady her breath. That was when a woman appeared at her side. Her black dress clung perfectly to a narrow waist, her dark waves tumbling effortlessly over her shoulders. Ice-blue eyes swept the room like a spotlight, pulling every glance in her direction. Her lips curved, the kind of smile that dripped with entitlement. "So," the woman said smoothly, drawing out the word, "you're Killian Bale's assistant." The way she hit the word made it hang heavy in the air. Chloe bit her lip, forcing a small smile. "Yes, you could say that." The woman tilted her head, her icy eyes sweeping over Chloe's face. "Susan," she said, extending her hand. As they shook, Susan's fingers pressed just a little too firmly into Chloe's. "How old are you, sweetheart?" Chloe shifted uneasily, her voice small. 21. Susan's smile widened. A glint of mockery flickered in her gaze. 21? Don't you think that's a bit young, to be an assistant? Her tone cut through the hum of the crowd, sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't realize Killian preferred working with someone quite so young. The word assistant stabbed Chloe for the second time that night. Her heart hammered. The implication couldn't be clearer. This woman had played a role in Killian's life before. And now she was standing here, staring Chloe down, daring her to deny it. Susan leaned closer, her lips almost brushing Chloe's ear, her perfume dizzying and thick. "Sweetheart," she whispered, her voice dripping with venom, her eyes glinting with icy confidence. "Killian always finds himself a new victim." The words landed heavy in Chloe's chest, like a stone sinking fast. Her lips parted, dry, breath stolen. Susan's voice dripped with mockery as Chloe's eyes flicked to the man across the room, Killian, surrounded by people commanding the space with effortless charisma. Yet even while he spoke, Chloe saw it. His gaze never fully left her. Susan leaned in, her smile razor-sharp. "Oh, Killian, charismatic, handsome. That British accent that makes a woman lose her mind. Isn't that right? Did it work on you too, sweetheart?" Her words sliced through the air, each one heavier than the last. Then she tilted her head, eyes glinting, and whispered the one thing that made Chloe's stomach twist. "Tell me, didn't he paint you yet?" Her smile widened, wicked, knowing, cruel. The implication hit Chloe like a blade. Just then, cutting through the hum of the crowd, came a voice Chloe knew too well. Deep, commanding, getting closer. "Everything all right here?" Her heart kicked against her ribs. Susan's words were still echoing in her skull when she felt it. The familiar weight of his hand settling possessively on her waist. The touch made her flinch. Killian's blue eyes locked onto hers, and in that instant the noise of the gallery seemed to fall away. It was only him, only that gaze that always left her breathless. Chloe swallowed hard, fighting the knot in her throat. Words wouldn't come. Was his touch steadying her, or making Susan's poison sink even deeper? Susan's lips curved into a knowing smile. She let her gaze linger on them both, then said sweetly, with a razor edge beneath it, "I'll leave you two." And with that, she drifted back into the crowd, perfume trailing behind like a taunt. Killian leaned down, his hand still firm on her waist, eyes never leaving hers. "What did she say to you?" Chloe held her breath. Susan's voice still echoed in her mind. Killian always finds himself a new victim, but she couldn't bring herself to repeat it. "It was nothing," she whispered, her voice breaking, barely audible. Killian tilted his head slightly, studying her. The curve at his lips wasn't a smile, something darker, threaded with suspicion. "Are you sure?" he asked, slow and deliberate, his fingers pressing just a little harder into her waist. The night was over, the gallery lights long extinguished. The drive home was wrapped in silence. Chloe stared out the window, but the city's glow couldn't drown out the noise in her head. Susan's words, Ryan's eyes, Killian's touch, all of it burned inside her. When they walked in, Killian set his keys on the table. Then he turned, just looking at her. Slowly, he closed the space between them, his fingers brushing against her cheek. His lips hovered near hers until Chloe instinctively pulled back. For the briefest moment, surprise flickered in his eyes. Then he exhaled, his voice lower, softer, more human than she'd ever heard it. "Don't do this to me, Chloe. I told you from the start. I'm not built for relationships. I've always kept my distance, because that's how it had to be. But you," his hand lingered against her face, unwilling to let go, "you chose to be here. And now, I'm trying to live with that. I don't want to lose you." Chloe's throat tightened, her eyes slipping shut. For the first time, the mask of the cold, untouchable man cracked, and beneath it, she saw the raw edge of vulnerability. But instead of easing her doubts, it only made the conflict inside her burn hotter. 3 days later, in the middle of the campus courtyard, the hum of voices surrounded them. Ryan caught Chloe before she could slip away. His expression carried a weight she wasn't used to seeing on him. "Chloe, there's something you need to hear," he said, his voice low, vibrating with a mix of anger and fear. Chloe shook her head quickly. "Ryan, I don't want this. Whatever you found out, I don't want to know." But he didn't let go. His hand closed gently, firmly, around her arm. "You do need to know. That man, Killian Bale, he's known in my father's circle. Sure, he's successful, respected in the art world, but his reputation with women? It's bad, Chloe, really bad. They say he has darker tastes. Things most people wouldn't talk about out loud." Chloe's heart clenched into a hard knot. Her lips parted as her eyes welled, the words sinking under her skin like poison. Breathing suddenly felt impossible. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Chloe finally spoke, her voice low and rough. "Okay, Ryan, thank you for caring about me. But I'll figure out my life on my own, all right? Please, don't interfere." She turned away before he could answer. A single tear slipped free, tracing down her cheek as she walked off. Chloe wandered through the silence of the luxurious loft, every step echoing against marble and glass. Killian's home was too perfect, too neat. Drawers aligned, files stacked in cold precision, books arranged with surgical order. There wasn't a trace of life, no photos, no forgotten cup, no sign of someone who truly lived there. It felt staged, like the entire place was a set designed for him, or maybe for whoever was watching. Her feet carried her to the one place that didn't fit, the studio. Here, chaos reigned. Splattered paint on the floor, brushes stiff with color, half-finished canvases leaning against the walls. The air smelled of turpentine and oil. It was the only room that felt alive. She stepped inside, heart thudding faster, and let her eyes roam over the paintings. Then, as she sank to a crouch, trying to catch her breath, something caught her attention. In the far corner of the wall, barely visible under shadow, was a faint mark, a line, different from the rest. Chloe froze. It didn't look like paint. It looked like a seam. She leaned in closer, running her fingers along it. A faint line in the plaster, almost like the paper had been laid wrong. With trembling hands, she slid the painting aside. Behind it was a small, nearly invisible button. Her breath caught. Should she press it? One voice inside screamed no, another whispered, "Find out the truth." She pressed her thumb against it. Click. The metallic sound echoed. Slowly, the wall pulled back, then slid to the side. Dust and a rush of cold air hit her face. From the darkness seeped a dim, red-tinged glow. And beneath it, the faint, chilling sound of metal chains scraping against each other. Chloe's throat tightened. When her trembling fingers found the light switch and flicked it on, the room's atmosphere closed in on her. The first thing that caught her eye were the silk ropes, neatly hung along the wall. Beside them, handcuffs, coils of rope in different thicknesses, chains, a black restraint post bolted into the floor. It looked like a stage set, but it wasn't decor. It bore the marks of use. And the walls? Chloe's breath caught in her throat. Hung in frames were drawings and paintings, nude female bodies, bound at the wrists, stretched tight with cuffs, some in oil with dramatic shadows, others reduced to raw lines in charcoal. There were no screaming faces, only depictions of surrender, of control, of ownership over the body. Women yielding. The room looked like an art gallery, but of erotica in its darkest, rawest form. Chloe's feet wanted to step back, but her eyes were locked on the paintings of women in bondage. A voice inside her whispered, "These are Killian's fantasies." Just then, she heard the faintest sound of footsteps behind her. Her fingers were still on the hidden room's light switch, her eyes brimming with tears. Behind her, standing in the doorway, was Killian. Even his silhouette felt like a threat, but in his eyes there was something unusual, surprise. "Chloe." His voice was low, rough. "How did you find this place?" Chloe's voice trembled, but the words cut sharp with pain. "They warned me about you. I didn't believe them, because I fell in love with you. I thought you cared about me. But you didn't even introduce me as your girlfriend. And this room." Her eyes swept over the chained figures on the canvases. "These are your fantasies?" Killian stepped toward her, slow and deliberate. "Come here." His arms opened as if to pull her close. "Don't touch me." Chloe jerked back, her breath quickening. "I'm afraid of you." For a moment, Killian's face tightened, but there was no anger in his eyes, only raw hurt. "Chloe," he said softly, "I would never hurt you. Never." He took another step closer, his voice stripped bare for the first time. "There's a reason for all this. I told you from the very beginning. I never let myself get close to women emotionally. I had my reasons, but none of that matters anymore. Because—" His eyes locked on hers, unblinking, unwavering. "Because you're different. I love you." Chloe's eyes widened. It was the first time he had said the word. From the lips of the cold, dangerous man before her, those 3 syllables shattered all the armor she thought he wore. Killian's voice dropped to a hushed confession, almost breaking. "I've never felt this deeply for anyone. Have I ever brought you here? No, because with you, just touching you was enough. Just having you near me was enough." Chloe's eyes swept the walls again, the chained bodies, bound wrists, faces caught somewhere between passion and fury. Her throat tightened, tears brimming. "What is this, Killian? Is this the only way you can be with women? Who drew these?" He didn't look at her, his gaze still fixed on the canvases. His voice came out cold, but something underneath it was cracking. "They don't matter." "They do." Chloe's voice trembled, but it cut through the silence. "They matter to me. Because if this is your truth, then it will become mine too." Killian exhaled slowly, the sound heavy in the dim room. For a long beat, he said nothing. Then his eyes finally met hers, shadowed by the faint red light. "I did," he admitted at last. "I painted them. This place. It's my therapy. The only way I've known to purge the rage, the hatred I carry for my mother, the distrust I feel toward women. A brush wasn't enough. My hands weren't enough. In this room, only in this room, I found release." Chloe's eyes widened even more. "And with women, it was always only like this?" Killian's jaw tightened. "Yes, they wanted it. I never forced anyone. But I couldn't give them the love they were looking for, because I didn't have it to give." Chloe's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Then why me? Why are you different with me?" Killian stepped closer until barely an inch separated them. "Because—" His voice was low, ragged, his eyes burning with a mix of darkness and something else. "Because before you, Chloe, I never loved anyone. You tore down my walls. And it's driving me insane." Chloe's heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might break through her chest. Tears streaked down her cheeks, yet the fire inside her only burned hotter. Should she run? Or should she stay? Killian reached out, his fingertips hovering just shy of her trembling chin. And in that moment, one question echoed through Chloe's mind. Was she here because she was truly loved, or because she was a prisoner of a dangerous desire? Her throat tightened, her vision blurred, but somehow she found her voice, fragile, trembling. "Killian, please let me go. I need to think. Yes, I want you, but something here feels wrong. Inside me, there's this war, fear, and desire crashing into each other. I have to leave." She stepped toward the door. As she passed him, Killian's shadow fell over her, heavy and inescapable. Killian's hand closed around her wrist. Chloe froze. She couldn't even breathe. What was he going to do? Was he not going to let her go? Was he going to tie her up, too? "Chloe." His voice cracked. His grip on her wrist was still firm, almost desperate. "Where are you going? Where will you stay? I can book you a hotel. If what you want is distance from me—" "No." Chloe shook her head, her lips curving into the faintest, almost broken smile. "I'll find somewhere on my own." Killian's eyes darkened, his lips pressed into a hard line. His voice dropped, rough and unyielding. "Ryan?" he asked. "You're going to him?" Chloe stiffened, her breath catching in her throat. When she finally looked at him, her eyes carried both pain and defiance. She didn't answer. The silence cut into Killian's chest like a blade. He drew in a long, steady breath and slowly released her wrist. For a fleeting second, their eyes locked, raw, unspoken. But Chloe knew she couldn't stay another moment. Chloe grabbed her bag in a rush, pulled the door open, and left him standing there, for the first time truly afraid of losing her. Chloe pulled out her phone an hour before her shift at the cafe was over, her hands trembling. Carrie still wasn't picking up. For a few seconds, she just stared at the screen, thinking. Did she have any other choice? Her finger hovered over Ryan's number, then pressed it. "Ryan, can you pick me up after work? I need a place to stay for a few days." There was half a second of silence. "Of course," Ryan said. "You're in luck. I just moved into my own place this week. You won't have to stay at my parents' house." An hour later, Chloe was in Ryan's car. He gripped the wheel, sneaking glances at her from the corner of his eye. Chloe tried to smile. "It wouldn't have been a problem if it was your family's place. I grew up in crowded houses with foster siblings, temporary families. I'm used to noise." Ryan kept his eyes on her, his expression steady. "Chloe, you made the right call. That guy isn't safe." Chloe swallowed hard. "I haven't made a decision yet. I just need a few days, some distance, and somewhere to stay." The muscle in Ryan's jaw tightened. The glow of the streetlights fell across their faces, and silence lingered between them. The smell of take-out Chinese food filled the apartment. Chloe stood by the window, her eyes tracing the shadowed lights of Central Park. She raised her brows slightly. "I didn't know your family was this well off, Ryan," she said softly. "You're humble about it. You never let it show. You're not like the other arrogant ones." Ryan smiled as he set the plate on the table. "I've got friends like that. Grew up with them. But me, I can get along with anyone." Chloe sat down at the table, her eyes tired yet softened by a faint glow. For a while, they talked about classes, other students, drawing techniques. At last, Chloe tilted her head. "So, why did you choose to study art?" Ryan shrugged, twirling his chopsticks lazily. "Seemed easier and fun." Chloe let out a short laugh, then shook her head. "Oh," she murmured, her eyes rolling slightly with amusement. Ryan watched her, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You were expecting something deeper, weren't you?" Chloe turned her gaze to him, still smiling. "I'm sure it means something to you. It's not my place to judge." The light from the window spilled across her face, casting a glow that made her look both fragile and resolute. Between them stretched a silence, brief but thick with something unspoken. Chloe had always sensed Ryan's interest. What she couldn't figure out was why she wasn't drawn to someone like him. Good, safe, kind. Instead, there was always a part of her that drifted toward dangerous shores. And then, a memory surfaced. She was 16, sitting in a psychologist's office after yet another foster placement. The woman's voice echoed in her head. "Chloe, you haven't had an easy life. I see it in your file. One foster home where you were abused, another with an alcoholic father figure who turned violent. You've been passed around since you were 2. For you, chaos and danger have always been the norm. The subconscious often overrides reason. It makes you believe that what you're used to is what feels safe." Was she right? When Chloe always said, "Bad luck follows me," was it really bad luck? Or were these her own choices? Ryan walked over, his expression thoughtful, as Chloe stood at the window. Her eyes, almost against her will, drifted to the glowing floor of Killian's apartment across the city skyline. Ryan held out a glass of wine. "Don't think about him," he said, tilting his head slightly. His voice carried both patience and a trace of hurt. "Come on, let's put on a movie. Maybe play some PlayStation. It'll take your mind off things." Chloe took the glass, a tired smile tugging at her lips. Ryan was trying. He was kind, safe, steady. But in her mind, in her heart, in her very veins, there was only one name: Killian. Killian stood at the window, staring out. Across the block, Chloe's light was on. She had no idea he was thinking of her, no idea his fists were clenched at his sides. Tonight was supposed to be a major auction, yet for the first time he'd ignored work. And work had been his only god for years. In the bedroom he found her bracelet on the nightstand. Thin, cheap, nothing special, and yet when he held it, it felt as heavy as gold. He turned it between his fingers, his throat tightening. He was 39, and a girl nearly half his age had unraveled him completely. His chest ached, his heart refusing to stay caged. He sat on the bed, grabbed the pillow where Chloe's head had rested. Her scent still clung to it. When he buried his face in the fabric, his eyes burned. "Don't do this, Bale," he whispered to himself. But his mind was already slipping, back to the only path he knew, his escape. For years, the only way he had known how to numb the pain was that room and the women he brought into it. One phone call was all it would take. He could have someone here within the hour, tie her down, strip her bare, claim her, then capture her on canvas. His pain, his hunger, his rage, all carved into paint and shadow. It was his medicine, and his curse, because his mother had locked him in dark rooms for years. As a little boy, when fear made him wet himself, she left him there hungry. And when his father came home, her face wore that perfect false smile, as if nothing had ever happened, playing the flawless wife. That was when Killian found his only escape, drawing, imagining his mother bound, punished, stripped of her power. At first with pencil, then with paint. But every line he drew had torn a piece from his own soul. He looked down at the bracelet in his hand, Chloe's innocence, the untainted softness woven into it. For a moment, his vision darkened. "I could make a call," he told himself. "It's the only way I know." But his fingers refused to let go of the bracelet. And then, from deep inside his chest, a forbidden voice spoke louder than ever before. What if, this time, there's another way? Chloe had curled up on the couch, her eyelids heavy until sleep finally claimed her. The dim light left the corners of the room in shadow, while Ryan sat quietly beside her. His gaze lingered on her face, distant and searching. He let a strand of her hair slip through his fingers, a deep longing etched across his expression. Barely louder than a whisper, almost as if speaking only to himself, he murmured, "If you only knew how happy I could make you." But Chloe's eyes suddenly fluttered open, clearing the haze of sleep. She looked startled, almost frightened. "Ryan, what are you doing?" Ryan pulled his hand back, dropping her hair at once. His face carried the panic of a child caught red-handed. "Chloe, I like you. I really like you. Give us a chance. I could make you so much happier than he ever will." Chloe sat up quickly, her breath uneven. She leaned back against the couch, eyes darting away from his. "Ryan, you're a good guy. I know that. Maybe once I could have wanted that. But I don't feel anything for you." Ryan's eyes darkened. On impulse, he lunged forward, reaching for Chloe's hand. "No, Chloe, just listen." "Don't touch me," Chloe cried, her voice trembling. Ryan flinched, pulling back. His fingers hung in the air before falling helplessly to his side. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Chloe's eyes welled with tears. Her lips quivered as the words slipped out between sobs. "Why me, Ryan? Why are you drawn to me? Because I'm not like everyone else around you? Because you think I'm some innocent, sweet girl?" Ryan stayed silent. He just looked at her, and that look only tightened the knot in Chloe's chest. Her voice suddenly rose, carrying a tone that even sounded foreign to her own ears. "I'm not some innocent, sweet girl, Ryan." Ryan froze. Chloe had jumped to her feet, eyes brimming with tears, breath coming faster. She paced the room from one end to the other, her hands trembling. "My whole life has been about survival. Do you have any idea how many times I was dragged to a psychologist? How many times they slapped a behavioral disorder label on me?" The fury in her voice barely masked the fragile, breaking place it was really coming from. Ryan couldn't move. Chloe kept going, words bursting out of her like a dam breaking. "And what about when I was 15? When my drunk foster father came into my room, tried to corner me?" Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her face. "I smashed his head with a lamp. His teeth shattered. I did that, Ryan. Me?" She broke into sobs, but she didn't stop. "My whole life I've run from men. I hated every single one of them. And you know what? Do you know why I got expelled from my last school? Her eyes locked onto his, sharp and cutting. Jason, he wouldn't leave me alone. I rigged his bike chain. He crashed, got hurt, and I never felt sorry for it. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The girl standing in front of him was not the Chloe he thought he knew. Chloe, sobbing, kept unraveling, her voice breaking, her body trembling as if she were being thrown around in the middle of the room. This girl you see, the innocent one, she's not that innocent, Ryan. I've been broken, stained, forced to fight. There's always been rage inside me. Then she stopped. Tears streamed down her face, but at the corner of her lips, a bitter awareness appeared. And now I get it. Why I was drawn to Killian? A moment of silence hung in the air. Chloe wrapped her trembling arms around herself and whispered, "Because his darkness doesn't scare me. It feels familiar. And that," her voice cracked, "that's what terrifies me the most." Ryan stood as if to move closer, but the fury and tears in Chloe's eyes stopped him cold. He stayed just a few steps away, helpless. "I just want to protect you," he said, his voice breaking. "But I get it. Maybe I'm the one who never truly understood you. You're not like any girl I've ever known." Chloe turned her face away, tears still streaking down her cheeks. Ryan's voice trembled, thick with pain and desperation. "And that's why I'll never be enough for you, will I? No matter how much I want to be, I'll never reach that darkness inside you." Chloe grabbed her backpack, her eyes still wet with tears. She paused at the doorway, looking back at Ryan. Her voice cut through the ache, steady despite the trembling in her chest. "I have to go where I belong." Ryan's throat tightened. He wanted to move, to stop her, but his feet felt nailed to the floor. As the door closed, the only sound that drifted into the empty hallway was Ryan's broken whisper. "And that place isn't me." Chloe was running under the streetlights, rain mixing with the tears on her face, though she could no longer tell which was which. Her heart pounded so violently it felt as if it might burst out of her chest. With every step, fear and longing tangled together, not pushing her away but pulling her forward, toward him, toward Killian. A trembling whisper slipped from her lips. "We didn't just get lost in the dark." Her eyes lifted to the sky, her voice breaking with both pain and surrender. "We are each other's wound, and the only cure." When Chloe's trembling hands turned the key, the loft door creaked open with a heavy groan. Stepping inside, she was met with darkness. The place that usually pulsed with a warm, dim glow now felt hollow, a shell filled only with an unsettling silence. Her footsteps echoed against the walls. Holding her breath, she checked the rooms one by one, the living room, the bathroom, the bedroom, empty. But there was still one door left unopened. The studio. Chloe's throat tightened, her fists clenched, knees trembling as dread crawled through her veins. A desperate voice inside her screamed, "Please, please, don't let him be in there with someone else." Chloe bit down on her lip. She couldn't bear it. Not if there was another woman in there. The dim light spilling from the room brushed across her face as she froze in the doorway. Killian was inside, sitting in the center on a stool, shirtless, wearing nothing but boxers. He wasn't moving, just staring straight ahead. Chloe's eyes swept over the room. Some paintings were missing from the walls, their torn fragments scattered across the floor. The studio was wrecked, and in the middle of it all sat Killian, like a man utterly broken. Chloe stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes fixed on him. As if sensing her, Killian slowly turned his head. "Chloe." His voice was rough, broken. "I'm here," she whispered. "I came back. I thought about it, Killian, and I finally understood why I should be with you." Killian rose to his feet and turned toward her. His eyes were bloodshot. his jaw shadowed with stubble. The powerful body she had once seen as unshakable now looked wrecked. Chloe's steps carried her forward, tears glistening in her green eyes. Her slender fingers traced across his face, trembling. "You told me you loved me," she whispered, her lips quivering. "Was that true?" Killian let out a pained smile. "More true than anything I've ever known." Chloe's lips trembled, her voice breaking. "Then why me, Killian? Why not the women on these walls?" "Because you scattered the darkness in my heart," he whispered. "Because you turned my world back around." Tears spilled down Chloe's cheeks. "But what if I'm not as innocent as you think, Killian? What if there are things I need to tell you?" Killian smiled faintly. "No matter what you've done." His hand pressed gently against Chloe's heart. "I felt this. Your pain, your struggles, your fight, and the honor you've guarded. Your truth, your rawness. To me, you're the purest woman in this world, Chloe. And nothing you could ever confess will change that." He scooped her up into his lap, and Chloe instinctively wrapped her legs around him. When their lips collided, the kiss was nothing like before. Hungry, desperate, as if quenching a thirst they had both carried for far too long. This time, it burned with a passion fiercer than anything they had ever known. Between his kisses, Chloe whispered, her voice trembling, "I have things I need to tell you." Killian's breath caught, his lips still brushing against hers as he answered hoarsely, "And I have things I need to tell you too." With that, he eased her back onto the couch, lowering her gently beneath him, his hands framing her face as if she might slip away. Killian held Chloe tightly in his arms, as if he could silence all the ghosts of his past by protecting this small body. When Chloe closed her eyes, the fear was gone, because next to her was not just a man, but a heart that, despite all its darkness, had chosen to fight for her. Outside, Manhattan's lights flickered, but for Chloe, the only real light was the spark in Killian's eyes. In that moment, they both understood. Neither the chains of the past nor the shadows of hidden rooms could ever eclipse the passion and love they had found in each other. They were each other's wounds and each other's cure. In life, some people don't cross our path by accident. Some come to challenge us, some to open doors, and some to help heal our wounds. You could call it fate, or maybe just the choices of our subconscious. But what do you think? Will Chloe and Killian really be good for each other? And please share with me, has someone ever come into your life to help heal your own wounds? Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. If this story touched you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe button. It honestly means the world to me.